He said I was erasing her memory, but the truth is darker than anyone will believe. Sometimes I wake up with his words in my head, next time I won't miss. Welcome to Reddit Toxic Family Telltales channel. New episode every day. My friend Isabel begged me to come over that day. She needed help scraping the lead paint off her mom's old bedroom walls before her brother Ian got home. Their dad was supposed to move into that room the very next day, but the place was a health hazard. Isabel had been trying to make the house safe ever since their mom passed away 2 months ago, but Ian? He refused to let her touch a single thing. Last time she tried, he gave her a black eye for tossing out moldy curtains. We pulled up around noon. Isabel's hands were trembling as she fit the key into the lock. The second we stepped inside, the smell of old paint and mildew hit me. The walls in her mom's room were peeling, flakes scattered across the floor like confetti from hell. Isabel whispered, "Dad's doctor said the lead exposure could kill him. His lungs can't handle it. We have to finish before Ian gets here." I told her, "We'll be done by 3. Plenty of time." Famous last words. We threw on masks, laid out plastic sheets, and started scraping. Every time a car rolled past outside, Isabel froze, eyes darting to the window like a deer about to bolt. "That sounds like his truck," she muttered again and again, even though it was barely 1 o'clock. I kept talking, trying to calm her down. "We're saving your dad's life, Isabel. That's all that matters." But she couldn't stop checking her phone every 2 minutes. By 1:30, she dropped the scraper and ran to the window when she heard a truck door slam. False alarm, it was just the neighbors. Her whole body was shaking. "Maybe we should stop," she whispered, voice quivering. This was a bad idea. But we were already halfway there and I convinced her to keep going. Still, my stomach was knotting too. Because I'd seen the picture she showed me, the bruises, the split lip. I knew what Ian was capable of. By 2 o'clock, most of the dangerous paint was scraped and we were sealing the walls. That's when Isabel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face turned ghostly pale. Ian's foreman texted. "He left the site. He's drunk. He'll be here in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. My heart dropped into my stomach. It was only 2:30 and lead chips were still everywhere. I told her, "We should leave now." But Isabel shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Dad will die if we don't finish." So we scrambled like maniacs, shoving toxic paint chips into hazmat bags, vacuuming dust without caring about neatness anymore. Dust coated our clothes, our hair, even through the masks. Isabel kept checking the window, gasping like she couldn't breathe. At 2:40 she froze. "That's his truck." I looked and sure enough, Ian's pickup lurched into the driveway. Even from upstairs I could see him stumble out, reeking of booze. Isabel panicked, trying to shove the hazmat bags out of sight, but there was nowhere to hide them. We were covered in dust, standing in the middle of a wrecked room. And then heavy footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Deliberate. She clamped onto my arm so tight it hurt. "Don't say anything. Let me talk." The bedroom door slammed open and there he was, towering 6 feet 4 inches, sweat and alcohol rolling off him in waves. His eyes landed on us, then the walls, then the bags of paint chips. His face went crimson. A vein bulged in his neck. "What did you do?" His voice was low, dangerous. Isabel stammered about saving Dad, but Ian crossed the room in 2 strides and smacked her so hard she collapsed into the toxic chips on the floor. I shouted for him to stop, but he turned on me, eyes blazing. "Get out of my house." "I'm not leaving without Isabel," I shot back. That's when he yanked a hammer from his tool belt. "You want to test me?" The room shrank around me. Isabel was trying to push herself up, blood dripping from her nose, paint dust stuck in her hair. Ian kicked a hazmat bag, sending toxic flakes flying everywhere, screaming, "You ruined her room! You ruined everything!" He blocked the doorway, hammer in hand. Isabel begged him, "Dad will die if he breathes this dust." But Ian didn't care. He grabbed her throat, slammed her against the wall. I lunged to pull him off, but the hammer whistled past my head, close enough to feel the air shift. "Want to erase Mom?" "I'll erase you," he snarled, raising the hammer again. I grabbed a scraper and slashed at his arm. He yelped, loosened his grip, and Isabel gasped for air. She tried to dart past him, but he yanked her back by the hair and hurled her into the pile of toxic bags. He came at me again, swinging. The hammer grazed my shoulder, white-hot pain shot down my arm. Isabel clutched his leg, desperate, but he kicked her so hard she folded to the ground. He loomed over her, hammer raised. "You're just like Dad. Couldn't wait for Mom to die. Probably helped her along." Isabel sobbed. "I was trying to save him." The hammer crashed into the floor inches from her head, splinters flying. Ian bellowed, "Next one won't miss." I threw myself at him, but he flung me into the wall. My skull cracked hard, stars exploding in my vision. Through the blur, I saw him plant his boot on Isabel's back, pinning her down, hammer trembling in his grip. His face twisted in rage, grief, alcohol. He screamed about hospice, about how she killed their mom by giving up. And then he raised the hammer high. I rolled to the side as it came down, splintering the floor where her head had just been. Isabel crawled toward the door, chips clinging to her clothes, while I grabbed a paint roller and hurled it. It barely clipped him, but it was enough to distract him. He spun, hammer raised again. And then we heard it. Sirens. Faint at first, then louder. Closer. Ian froze, hammer trembling above his head. His eyes went wide, darting to the window, then back to us. Isabel seized the chance, crawling past him into the hall. I lunged for his ankle, tripping him just enough that the hammer clattered to the floor. He lashed out, boot slamming into my ribs, the pain searing through my chest. He bent to snatch the hammer back, but then boom. The front door crashed open. Boots thundered up the stairs. Shouts, "Police! Get on the ground!" 2 officers stormed in with guns drawn. Isabel and I dropped flat immediately, my cheek pressed into the lead dust. Ian spun around, shouting it was his house, his mother's room, his rights. One cop barked at him to get down. Ian stepped forward, fists waving, still yelling, until both officers slammed him into the wall. The picture frame shattered. It took both of them to cuff him while he kept thrashing, spitting rage. EMTs flooded in right after. One knelt by Isabel, who was coughing blood, her throat already bruised purple. They strapped a collar on her neck, rolled her onto a board, her voice a broken rasp. Another medic checked me, shined a light in my eyes, pressed the back of my head, his gloves coming away bloody. He asked what day it was, who the president was, while prodding my throbbing shoulder. Downstairs, they found Isabel's dad in his chair, wheezing, disoriented. They rushed oxygen onto his face and carried him out on a stretcher, his voice weak as he asked, "Where's Isabel?" Cops snapped pictures, the holes in the floor, the blood splattered on the wall, the scattered chips, the hammer. Bagged everything as evidence. Then it was sirens again. Wailing. Deafening. The ride to the hospital felt endless. The medic kept slapping my cheek lightly, whispering, "Stay with me. Don't close your eyes." My head was splitting open, my ribs screaming every time the ambulance hit a bump. And all I could think was, how did trying to save someone's father turn into this? In the ER, they rolled Isabel into the bed right next to mine. Curtains separated us, but not the sound. I could hear her straining to whisper through the damage to her throat, trying to answer the nurses. Dr. Gauber walked in, calm but all business. She ordered CT scans for both of us on the spot, along with blood tests to check for lead exposure. She was gentle though, careful hands as she photographed every bruise and cut with this special camera, measuring each one with a ruler, her voice steady as she dictated details into her recorder. Then she turned to me, soft but firm, "Tell me exactly what happened." I recounted everything while she spoke into the mic, her pen scratching notes, her eyes never leaving mine. They wheeled me off to the scanner, that giant machine humming as it spun around my head. Lying still while it clicked and buzzed felt endless, but they brought me back to the ER just in time to see Isabel being taken for hers. That's when Detective Bennett Rollins showed up. An older man, notebook in hand, steady presence. He dragged a chair right between our beds, patient as ever. Isabel couldn't talk much, so she scribbled answers with shaky hands. I had to walk him through the entire nightmare, step by step, what time we got to the house, what we did with the paint, when Ian arrived, every word he said, every swing of that hammer. Rollins wrote everything down and had us both sign. Isabel's hand trembled so badly her signature looked like a stranger's. Not long after, a woman named Francine Pratt from Domestic Violence Services came in. Kind eyes, warm voice. She sat beside Isabel's bed and spoke softly about safety planning, protective orders. Isabel kept writing the same words again and again on the notepad Francine gave her. Asterisk, "I just wanted to save Dad." Asterisk tears streamed down her bruised face, blotting the ink until the letters bled. The detective's phone buzzed. He excused himself, answered quickly, and his pen started flying across the page as a man's voice barked through the line loud enough for us to hear, though we couldn't catch the words. When Rollins hung up, he looked at us seriously. It was Ian's foreman, Ross Bradford, confirming Ian had left the site drunk around 2:30, after sneaking alcohol during lunch. Ross had tried to stop him from driving, but Ian had grabbed a wrench and threatened to smash his skull if he didn't back off. Ross admitted it wasn't the first time Ian had been drunk on a job or violent. Rollins scribbled it all down, more evidence. A new doctor in scrubs walked in next. Dr. Abraham Shaw, he introduced himself, explaining he needed to check Isabel's dad immediately. He was gone for nearly 20 minutes, and when he returned his expression was grim. He said the lead dust inside that bedroom could be lethal for someone with compromised lungs. Their dad couldn't go back to that house. Orders went in right away to move him somewhere safe. That broke Isabel. She sobbed harder, scribbling that Ian was still her brother, that their dad needed both his children. Francine rubbed her back gently and explained the truth. It didn't matter if Isabel wanted charges or not. The state would prosecute on its own when someone nearly dies from domestic violence. The detective nodded, confirming the evidence was overwhelming. The hammer, the photos, our sworn statements, Ross's testimony. The prosecutor wouldn't let this slide. But Isabel just shook her head over and over, insisting this would rip her family apart. Francine's voice stayed steady. It was already torn apart when Ian started hurting you. My head was throbbing so badly I could barely process. Still, I caught it when the detective said Ian would probably make bail by morning. He had no prior record. Isabel's eyes went wide with fear, and she crushed my hand in hers until my knuckles hurt. She looked to Francine, desperate, as if a piece of paper could really stop him. By morning, they discharged me. Concussion protocol, they said. Watch for headaches, dizziness, confusion. Come back if it worsens. My shoulder was strapped tight, and they gave me pain meds but warned not to overdo it with the head injury. Then came the bill estimate. I nearly puked when I saw it, over $3,000 already. Just for the ER and CT scan. Isabel was discharged too, but they kept her dad admitted, monitoring his breathing and mental confusion from the lead. The police escorted us back to the house so we could grab clothes and his medications. That's when the lead hazard inspector arrived. He set up his equipment, spent hours collecting samples. Finally, he taped off the bedroom with bright yellow hazard warnings, unsafe for human occupancy. Then he handed Isabel the estimate. Minimum $15,000 for cleanup. She broke down sobbing right there. Francine was a rock. Phone already to her ear, she called a locksmith to change every lock before Ian could even think about returning. She also tapped into victim assistance funds, emergency housing, some money toward abatement. While we waited for the locksmith, she pulled out 2 small pepper spray canisters and made us practice. Aim for the eyes, sweep side to side, then run and call 911, she instructed, over and over, until the motion stuck in muscle memory. The locksmith arrived, swapped every lock, and handed Isabel 3 fresh sets of keys. He warned her not to give spares to family because Ian would find a way. By that afternoon, just like the detective predicted, Ian made bail. And then Isabel's phone lit up with messages. Aunts, cousins, all parroting Ian's story, accusing her of destroying the family. One aunt calling her selfish. A cousin saying she provoked him by touching their mom's room. Another relative swearing she was killing their dad by placing him in a facility. Meanwhile, Dr. Xiao had arranged for her dad to stay 2 weeks in a rehab center while the house was cleaned. He kept asking why he couldn't go home, too confused to understand, convinced Isabel was the one keeping him away. The next morning, we met Detective Rollins at the courthouse. He guided us through the emergency protective order paperwork, carefully explaining each section. Isabel's hand shook, but she wrote every detail about the hammer attack. The judge reviewed it all, nodded, and granted the order immediately. 2 weeks of protection, 500 feet of distance required. Violation meant jail. Rollins handed us his card. His voice was firm when he said, "If he shows up anywhere near you or tries to reach you through anyone else, call me immediately." And I knew then, the fight was just beginning. More and more calls poured in from Isabel's relatives. They told her she was wrong for dragging the courts into this, that family matters should stay private, that their mom would be ashamed of her for putting Ian in the system. Isabel stopped answering the phone entirely, except for me, the detective, and Francine. But the voicemails kept coming, guilt-tripping her, begging her to fix things before it was too late. The next morning, Detective Rollins asked me to come down to the station. He wanted my phone. I handed it over and watched as he plugged it into their system, downloading every photo I'd taken of Isabel's injuries. Each image came up on his screen, zoomed in bruises, cuts, dates, timestamps. He jotted everything down. Isabel arrived too with her phone. She had even more evidence, pictures from when Ian broke her wrist last year, injuries she never reported. Rollins' face hardened with every new image, especially the ones showing finger-shaped bruises around her throat. Then he played us footage from the neighbor's doorbell camera. The audio filled the room, screaming, crashing, Ian's voice roaring threats to kill Isabel. My hands started shaking all over again just hearing it. Rollins said this was one of the strongest cases he'd seen in years. That afternoon, Ross Bradford came in to give his statement. He sat across from Rollins in the interview room, explaining how Ian had been drinking on job sites for months, how his temper was terrifying everyone. Ross described a near-fatal fight just last week when Ian swung a sledgehammer at a co-worker over who got to use the nail gun. 3 men had to drag him off before he killed someone. Ross pulled out pages of notes, dates, times, incidents of Ian showing up drunk, smashing walls, threatening co-workers with tools. His voice cracked once as he said, "We're all scared of him." 2 days later, Isabel got a text from the sheriff's office. The restraining order had been served. Deputies had to pound on Ian's door for 20 minutes before he finally opened it, still drunk from the night before. They forced him to surrender his hunting rifle and 2 handguns. He fought it until they threatened to cuff him on the spot. Isabel showed me the notification when it hit her phone. For the first time in weeks, she exhaled just a little. But trauma has a way of creeping in when you least expect it. For me, it was construction sounds. Every time I heard hammering outside my apartment, my body seized up. Sweating, frozen, reliving it. Nights were worse. I checked the locks 5-6 times. Got back in bed, then got up again to check them. My doctor said it was normal after what happened. She gave me anxiety meds, referred me to trauma counseling, but the first available appointment was 3 weeks away. Isabel was drowning in her own crisis. The rehab facility called. They could only keep her dad 5 more days. His lungs required special equipment, constant monitoring. Most places couldn't handle it. The ones that could wanted $3,000 a month even after Medicare. Isabel sat at the kitchen table with her mom's jewelry box, spreading everything out, wedding ring, pearl necklace, trinkets. She cried over each piece, remembering where her mom wore it, calculating what they might fetch at a pawn shop. That week, the prosecutor called Isabel. She warned her, Ian might not go to jail. First-time assault cases often ended in plea deals, 2 years probation, anger management, alcohol treatment. Isabel was torn. Part of her wanted him locked away, another part hoped maybe treatment could change him. Meanwhile, my bills arrived. The ER visit alone, $4,000. The CT scan, $2,000. By the time they tallied everything, I owed nearly $8,000 after insurance. I filled out victim compensation forms, but they warned me the process could take months. I had to set up a payment plan just to avoid collections. The lead abatement estimates came in next. $15,000 at the lowest, $22,000 at the highest. Specialized crews, containment units, certified disposal. Isabel called every state program she could find. Most had waitlists. Some didn't cover lead at all. She spent hours on hold, hours filling out forms that might never be read. Then, while cleaning her mom's closet, she found a small wooden box. Inside was a letter, written a month before her mom died. In her mother's handwriting, a wish for the bedroom to be repainted in soft yellow and green, colors that would bring light and warmth back. She wrote that the dark walls made her sad and she hoped someone would brighten them after she was gone. Isabel collapsed on the floor, sobbing, clutching that letter. Proof that she hadn't betrayed her mother's memory, she'd been honoring her wishes all along. The next morning, we carried that letter to Rollins and Francine. They both read it carefully, then copied it for the case file. Francine looked Isabel in the eye and said, "This proves you were carrying out your mother's wishes, not destroying them." 3 days later, we sat in the courthouse waiting room, hands trembling as case after case went in and out. Isabel kept checking her phone, making sure her dad's aide knew where we were. Finally, they called our number. Inside, Ian was already seated with his lawyer. He looked smaller in a cheap suit that didn't fit, eyes downcast. He wouldn't even glance at us. The judge read through the paperwork, then called Rollins forward. He laid out everything, photos of our injuries, pictures of the shattered floor, the hammer hole inches from Isabel's head. The judge's face hardened as each image flashed on the screen. Ian's lawyer tried to brush it off as a family dispute, but the judge cut him cold. "Did you see the medical reports?" she asked. Then she had the doctors confirm every injury. After an hour of testimony, the judge extended the restraining order for a full year. Ian had to stay 500 feet away from Isabel, me, and their dad. His face flushed red, but his lawyer gripped his arm to keep him silent. We left through a side exit while Ian was held back, giving us a 30-minute head start. That same afternoon, Isabel's phone rang. Ian's union rep. They were putting him on unpaid leave until the criminal case wrapped. His employer followed up in writing, he couldn't come back without completing substance abuse treatment. Word spread quickly, he was behind on truck payments, his landlord threatening eviction. Pressure mounting, his lawyer floated a plea, inpatient rehab instead of prison. A week later, the judge ordered it, 30 days at a treatment center 2 hours away. Isabel wept when she heard. Part fear, part hope. She kept saying their mom would have wanted him to get help years ago. While Ian was away, Francine called with rare good news. She'd pushed Isabel's emergency funding application through, $12,000 approved for the lead cleanup. My victim compensation came in too, $5,000. Enough to cover most of my hospital debt. When I opened the letter, I sat in my car and cried in relief. The cleanup crew arrived in white hazmat suits, respirators covering their faces, sealing the bedroom in plastic sheeting. Machines hummed, creating negative air pressure. They wet down every surface before scraping, sealed every scrap in special containers. 3 days of work non-stop. While they worked, Isabel and I packed her mom's belongings. We found photo albums, birthday cards, her wedding dress. Isabel kept the treasures, donated clothes to a shelter, gave furniture to families in need. For the first time, it felt like we were honoring her mom's memory instead of preserving a toxic shrine. When the inspector cleared the house, we brought Isabel's dad back. The walls were bright and clean, painted white, ready for the soft yellow and green her mom had wished for. He stood in the doorway, trembling, tears streaking his cheeks. He touched the smooth wall and whispered that he'd known the lead was dangerous for years, but fear of Ian had kept him silent. Then he turned to Isabel, apologizing over and over, for not protecting her, for letting Ian hurt her, for being too weak to stop it. And for the first time, it felt like maybe healing was possible. 2 weeks into Ian's rehab, the prosecutor called with the offer on the table. 2 years of probation, mandatory counseling, weekly alcohol monitoring, and $10,000 in restitution. One screw-up, any missed class, any failed test, and he'd serve 3 years in prison. To move it forward, she needed our victim impact statements before the plea hearing. So I sat at my desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard, and dragged myself back into that room. I wrote about the sound of the hammer slicing air beside my ear, the sickening thud when it hit the floorboards, and the way 4 walls can feel like a coffin when you can't get past a body in a doorway. I told her about the nightmares where I'm back there, trapped again, and how I still can't stand tight spaces without my chest locking up. I listed the bills that shredded my savings and the therapy I needed just to think straight. Isabel tried to write hers but kept breaking down, pen tapping against the page like a heartbeat that couldn't settle. She asked me to help her say what she meant, that she was trying to save their father's life, that she still loved her brother, and that love and trust are not the same thing anymore. Meanwhile, Isabel found a support group at the community center, people who knew what it felt like to be torn in half by loyalty and fear. The first meeting bruised her, saying out loud what Ian had done made her shake. But then other siblings shared their own splits, a woman who testified against her brother and lost half her family over it, a man whose sister nearly killed his wife, and he still carries the guilt for calling the cops. They understood the knot in your stomach when you want the person you love to get better, from far, far away. 3 weeks later we were back in court. My arm was still in a sling from where the hammer clipped me, but Isabel squeezed my good hand and we sat in the last row. Ian stood by his public defender in that same ill-fitting suit. The prosecutor read the charges. The judge made Ian say what he did, every act, every threat, out loud in detail. His voice cracked when he admitted he raised a hammer over his sister and told her he could kill her. Isabel's grip on my fingers went numb. The judge accepted the plea, 2 years probation, anger management, alcohol treatment, and $10,000 restitution split between Isabel and me. Violate anything and it converts straight to prison. The no-contact order would stay in effect the whole time. Ian nodded, eyes down while his lawyer scribbled notes. The bailiff led him out a side door. He never looked back. I started physical therapy the next week, rubber bands, tiny weights, slow circles that burned more than they looked like they should. Range of motion? My therapist kept asking. Meanwhile, the counselor my doctor recommended, an older woman with a steady tone, walked me through the attack again and again until I could say the words without my body trying to crawl out of the chair. She kept reminding me, there was nothing else I could have done. I already put my life between Isabel and that hammer. The guilt was a story my fear was telling, not the truth. Isabel's dad signed a healthcare proxy after his doctor laid it bare. The lead dust nearly killed him. He cried as he signed, apologizing to Isabel from his hospital bed, apologizing for not protecting her from Ian, for being too afraid of his own son to intervene. Isabel held his hand and told him it wasn't his fault, that grief and alcohol had turned Ian into someone none of them recognized. The hospital social worker lined up help. A home care aide would come 3 times a week once he was discharged. She'd be trained to spot elder abuse and had a direct line to adult protective services. Her name was Maria, no nonsense, efficient and kind. She took over like a field commander, color-coded pill schedules, doctor appointment calendars, pulse oximeter training. Isabel learned how to read the numbers, when to adjust the oxygen, when to call for help. One night over takeout at my place we made each other promise, never again. Never handle danger alone. We both installed security systems with panic buttons tied straight to 911. Isabel added extra locks to every door. It felt a little paranoid, until it felt like breathing. A month later the prosecutor called to say Ian's counselor had forwarded a letter, an apology Ian had written, but because of the order he couldn't send it to us directly. Isabel stared at the sealed envelope a long time, then slid it into a drawer. Not ready, she whispered. I'm not ready to hear his reasons. By then the house looked like it could finally exhale. Fresh white paint on every wall. New locks. Special air filters humming so there wasn't a speck of lead left. Isabel's dad started spending afternoons in the living room watching game shows instead of hiding in his bedroom. The inspector came back, ran the final tests, and handed over a certificate that the home was safe. Isabel framed it and hung it in the hallway like a diploma in survival. 3 months after the attack I woke up and realized. I'd slept the whole night. No bolt upright at 3 a.m., no meds. At work, a dropped binder didn't send my body into fight or flight. My boss had been generous with flexible hours for therapy, and we finally started sliding back into routine. Then Isabel called me crying, good tears for once. Her manager had promoted her to team lead after seeing everything she'd been balancing. The raise covered her dad's home care costs with some breathing room for the first time in months. Her co-workers had stepped up too, covering shifts for court dates, even organizing a small collection to help with legal fees. Around the same time the first restitution payment hit, $500. It shaved a slice off my ER bill. Ian would have to send that every month for 20 months. It wasn't the amount, it was the accountability. He couldn't drink this away. He couldn't pretend it didn't happen. The prosecutor's office sent another update. Ian finished his 30 days and moved into a sober living house across town with 10 other men in recovery. The rules were strict: curfews, random breathalyzers, permission slips for grocery runs. Monthly counseling reports to the court. He had a sponsor, went to 7 a.m. meetings and, according to his aunt, was actually writing nightly journal entries for step 4 instead of just checking boxes. The checks kept coming. I used mine on the hospital bill, Isabel used hers for her dad's prescriptions. The court clerk said those payments would keep coming nearly 2 years, meaning Ian had to stay employed, accountable, visible. With the lead gone and routine returning, Isabel's dad got stronger. His lung doctor said each test looked a little better. He started walking to the kitchen without the oxygen tank, doing crossword puzzles at the table while Isabel cooked. Maria taught him simple exercises to rebuild strength. He began laughing at old sitcom reruns instead of staring at a blank wall. Little miracle by little miracle. Then came an unexpected knock, Isabel's cousin, also named Maria, holding a casserole and an apology. She said she'd been wrong, she hadn't understood how bad Ian's drinking was, or how dangerous the lead had been. 2 more relatives called that week offering rides to appointments and grocery runs. Isabel cried when her uncle offered to pay for a cleaning service so she wouldn't carry the whole house on her back. My PT sessions dropped from twice a week to once, then turned into a home routine. 2 months in, I could lift my arm overhead without wincing. My therapist moved me from weekly to bi-weekly, then to monthly check-ins. On a Saturday, I helped my neighbor fix a fence, and when she pulled out a hammer, I didn't flinch. That felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Isabel surprised me next. Her support group mentioned the domestic violence hotline needed Spanish-speaking volunteers. She took the plunge, 40 hours of training on safety planning and crisis intervention. Her first shift scared her, but afterward she said it felt right, like turning the worst thing that happened to her into someone else's escape route. The coordinator told her she was a natural, because she knew the terrain. 5 months after the attack, we sat in Isabel's kitchen while her dad worked a puzzle at the table. The walls were the soft yellow her mom had once written about, a color that made the light feel kinder. The air smelled like sautéed onions and cilantro, not dust and fear. Her dad told us about the birds at the feeder, asked if we wanted to watch Jeopardy. After dinner, Isabel had rehung her mom's favorite photos, but in new frames mixed with snapshots from better days. The 6th restitution payment cleared, my credit card balance finally started shrinking. Isabel's insurance handled most of her dad's care, and the raise covered the rest. Another update arrived through the court, 5 months sober. Ian had found work at a moving company, no job sites, no tools like the ones he used to rage with. He was still living at the sober house, still going to meetings, already through step 4. His sponsor said he was actually doing the work, not just performing it. The no-contact order stayed in place for another year. Isabel said maybe far down the road there could be a conversation. Not now. Not soon. Maybe one day. Her dad didn't ask for Ian anymore, except to check whether the restitution was arriving on time. I went back to helping friends with normal things, painting a bedroom, putting up shelves, without scanning for exits. Isabel kept her Tuesday night hotline shift and started co-leading support groups for Spanish-speaking survivors. We learned the hardest, strongest thing you can do is raise your hand and say, I need help, and call in backup before the worst happens. Thanks for watching. Today's train wreck is over, but tomorrow's ride is already on track. Subscribe so you don't miss it.